1 week after he was arrested on federal bribery charges, Ohio Republicans are taking steps to remove Representative Larry Householder as Speaker of the House. Lynna Lai explains what's next in the process.
Speaker Householder, what do you have to say to Ohioans?
Not at this time.
1 week after Republican Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and 4 others were arrested in a $61 million bribery case.
It's just kind of a sickening story.
And following the governor's call for Householder's resignation, the disgraced speaker has not stepped down. And the last time reporters asked if he would,
no.
But House Republicans plan to force his hand. The state's GOP caucus voting by secret ballot to introduce a resolution on Thursday to remove Householder as Speaker.
It's been heartbreaking as well as shocking.
Strongsville Republican Tom Patton wants to purge Householder's tainted tenure further by co-sponsoring a bill to repeal House Bill 6, the billion-dollar taxpayer bailout of First Energy's nuclear power plants at the center of Householder's arrest.
That was $61 million tainted, that bill, whether the bill had merit or not.
Ohio Democrats called for Householder's swift removal in a statement declaring a Republican culture of corruption, saying for the second time in 3 years, Republican leadership has betrayed the people of Ohio.
The right measures.
In fact, former Republican Speaker Cliff Rosenberger was investigated in 2018 as the FBI raided his home, looking into his travel and lavish lifestyle. He has not been charged, and the investigation remains open.
What do you think it'll take to restore public trust?
We need to make sure that we act swiftly to make sure that people know we're going to get Ohio back on track as quick as we can.
Republicans are expected to pass the resolution to remove Householder as Speaker on Thursday. Now, Householder would remain a state representative for now. Meanwhile, the effort to repeal and replace House Bill 6 is gaining steam. Representative Patton hopes it will be repealed by September. Russ?
Lynna, as you said, Householder has said he will not resign if he is voted out of his Speaker's position. Any indication that he'll mount a legal challenge?
You know what? Anything is possible at this point. Representative Patton is surprised that Householder hasn't stepped down on his own thus far. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost has already outlined his arguments that the House does have the power to remove him as Speaker and that the legislature does have the power to remove Householder from office if need be. So we'll still have to wait and see. Householder has not commented, and neither has his attorney.
Okay. Lynna Lai, thank you.